In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna that one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. And Krishna goes on to say, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. In today's video, we will explore how we can conquer the mind and how we can utilize it as our best friend and not allow it to become our worst enemy. If this is your first time here, my name is Śaśi-śekhara, and on this channel we explore how to find real happiness, inner peace, and our true purpose through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita. So we've all had the experience of the mind taking us to places that we don't want to go. The mind is like some kind of juggernaut, bouncy ball that sends in so many different ideas and concepts, happiness, sadness, ups and downs, pulling us this way and that way. We feel happiness and the mind tells us, oh, this is the greatest happiness. We feel sadness and the mind tells us, oh, this is the worst sadness. The mind is always responding to outside stimulus. But as Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, that the mind, depending on how you use it, can be utilized as your best friend or your worst enemy. So the mind is actually, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, a function of the senses. It is a sense. It is the repository of all the senses that are coming into us from sight, touch, smell, taste, hearing. And it is processing all of those things. And it's taking that and it's seeking for more. And the intelligence is actually a section of the consciousness that can be utilized by the mind or can utilize the mind. And when the consciousness and the intelligence is being overrun by the mind, which is just an extension of the senses, then we're seeking after things outside of ourselves for happiness. We're seeking after the gratification of the senses to fulfill the desires and the demands of the mind. And when we do that, the mind is being utilized in the wrong way. Because actually the mind should be utilized by the intelligence, and the intelligence should be directed by the soul. When we understand that we are actually eternal spiritual living entities, we are spiritual beings, and we are not our bodies, we are not our minds. We are eternal spirit souls. And we have come to this material world, and we are inside of these bodies and the mind, which are material elements, the mind being a subtle material element. And when we understand that, we can start to see the differences between who we really are and the mind. See, when we think we are those thoughts that come through our mind, when we think we are those desires, then we are in confusion, we are in illusion. And that pulls us. This is when the mind is our worst enemy, because it pulls us into directions and into situations and circumstances that ultimately do not lead to our best interest and that degrade our consciousness. And the purpose of the human form of life is to elevate our consciousness. So it's understanding this at getting this knowledge coming out of ignorance of who we really are, so that we can utilize the mind for what? To become our best friend. How is the mind our best friend? How do we conquer it? We conquer it by, first of all, gaining knowledge of the different aspects of who we really are, the soul, that the mind is an aspect of the senses, and that if the mind is pulling us here and there, like wild horses, then we are going to be dragged wherever it wants us to go. But actually, our intelligence, should be utilized by the soul, who we really are, to direct the mind towards those things that will elevate us. And we can utilize the mind to seek after those things and to take in those things and to create new types of desires within us. The desire for spiritual perfection, the desire for finding our true purpose through spiritual realization. This is how we can utilize the mind to be our best friend. By regulating, by using the mind to use our willpower to regulate our activity, to study spiritual knowledge. From this, we will gain real peace of mind. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that without peace of mind, there can be no happiness. So this is the prerequisite for finding real happiness. We are seeking for happiness outside of ourselves with the mind. That can never really satisfy us. But when we turn inward and turn within the self and utilize our intelligence to control the mind and focus it on that which really matters, the mind becomes a tool for our spiritual realization. And this is what Krishna is explaining to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. And we can take that knowledge and assimilate it into our own life. Arjuna is like a representation of all people. We're all having this internal struggle. The struggle against the desires and our higher self. And that push and pull. And in our conditioned state, the subtle and gross elements are pulling on us and pulling us down. But Krishna wants us to come up. Krishna wants us to elevate. And that is what spiritual knowledge is about. And that is why Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. By using the mind as a tool for spiritual growth and recognizing that the mind is subservient to the soul and the intelligence. This requires some willpower and some strength internally. So it requires establishing an environment that you can actually have success, being around other people who are seeking this type of knowledge. How to live, what to eat, how to sleep, how to sit. All of these things are described by Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita to give us the guidance and the direction on how to utilize our life properly for this type of practice and for the true practice of yoga, which is to link ourselves to the Supreme. Yoga is not about how many exercises we can do or how flexible we can get. Yoga is about how we can link. And that is what Krishna is talking about to Arjuna. And as you go through your life, recognize that those thoughts in your mind, those desires that you have, those are not you. Those are the mind seeking. But who you really are is the eternal spirit soul. Meditate on this. The mind can be the best of friends or the worst of enemies, depending on how you use it. Recognize that the mind is under your control. You don't have to follow its direction. You can create the direction. Listen to what Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Study this. And of course, chant Hare Krishna to purify the soul, purify the mind, create strength within yourself, spiritual strength, and find real happiness and bliss in your life.